and we're very excited to start this series. It's more of an educational series and series which are supposed to be very practical in nature to kind of help you either fine-tune your career if you're in the career path already, and or if you're joining the workforce, it kind of give you an idea on what to choose and where to go based on all the knowledge that you acquire from here and elsewhere as well. So our guest for our first session here is Deepak Seth. Deepak is a technology, innovation, and digital transformation expert. He's a deep thinker, futurist. I will not steal his thunder and let him introduce himself. He has but he does have a pretty heavy background in technology. He graduated in engineering, and then he recently did a postgraduate in data science along with AI and ML. He's a very prolific writer as well as a speaker, and we interacted when I'm still at Accenture, when he was at Accenture, and I was very impressed with Deepak and his knowledge, and he's always I see him on LinkedIn always propagating knowledge and sharing it with others. So I said, okay, why not invite him for our first series here, first session here, and give everyone else an opportunity to understand from the expert himself on his perspectives on this very fundamental, very basic subject around data. All right, with that, Deepak, I'm going to just hand it over to you to further introduce yourself, and then we can get into topics.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Mushtaq. This is great. Love the opportunity. It's a pleasure and privilege to join you guys and share some aspects of my data journey, and see this will be an interactive session. So if you keep the questions coming, we'll have time at the end for Q&A also. Yeah, Mushtaq was very kind with his introduction about me. So I'll let you judge whether I live up to that introduction or not. As Mushtaq mentioned, we ran into each other when both of us were at Accenture. In fact, we had joined Accenture as part of the same experienced hire cohort. So I think it was our orientation day on which we had orientation program we had run into each other. Since then, our paths have moved in slightly different directions. But I'm glad that Mushtaq reached out and to have me talk about this. So what I'm going to do is share, as I said, some vignettes of data journey, essentially focusing on storytelling through data. So we'll talk about data, we'll talk about storytelling, we'll talk about the relevance of data for storytelling. We'll look at the world of AI and the role data plays in that. And we'll also, time permitting and based on your questions, also speak about what and how you can structure your careers to leverage opportunities arising in the field of data. That said, let me start sharing my screen and walk you through some content which I have put together. Just give me a second. So are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Deepak.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I titled it Demystifying Data Through Data-Driven Storytelling. And as I mentioned, we are going to talk about data. We are going to talk about storytelling. And hopefully that will demystify some of the aspects around data. So before I start with anything, I'm just sharing a little story about 6 blind men and the elephant. I'm sure some of you would have come across this story. Essentially, it's from the olden days. There's an elephant there, and there are these 6 blind people who come across the elephant. Now, each touch different part of the elephant, and based on which part of the elephant they touch, they form a different perspective of what the thing they are touching is. So the person who touches the spear tusk thinks it's a spear. The person who touches the trunk thinks it's a snake. The person who touches the side thinks it's a wall, and so on. And none of them were able to visualize the elephant itself. So the point I'm trying to make by this story is that there are a multiplicity of perspectives associated with data. So the data may be same, but different depending on which part of the data you touch, you may form a perspective about it. And also that may not be the correct perspective, because you need to have a complete overview to get a sense of the full elephant. So moral of the story, data work cannot be piecemeal. If you are approaching it piecemeal, you may be missing the big picture. So we always have to keep the big picture in mind. Now, coming to data means we look at these interesting stories from our cultural background. All of you must be familiar with Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. You have got the 1001 Nights. And earlier in the story, the one which I mentioned, I said 6 blind men and the elephant. So each of these stories, you saw that there was a data element to it. There was the 6, there was the 40, there was the 1001. And what it's interesting, it's almost fascinating to try to understand why data was needed in these stories. Like, would this story have been as appealing if it would have just been Alibaba and many thieves, or many knights, or a few blind people and elephant? Apparently not, because data provides specificity to the narrative. And this is something which we have to keep in mind as we move through harnessing and utilizing data. Data is delivering a lot of value, and data is something which resonates with the people whom you are doing the reporting for. Now, this is an example of a test report coming out of a crash of one of the US space shuttles. Now, this is a report which had been prepared by an engineering team, and this identifies the root cause of what the problem would have been, which caused that in the wing of the space shuttle, it caused a slight some particle caused an impact, and it caused a crash. And so this is the report about that, and which talks about what may have caused the issue, and what needs to get done about it. But as you can see, the way this is presented, now many engineers, I'm guilty of that, maybe some of you are, we focus very much on the absolute facts. We just list them down, and we assume that the reading audience will be able to make sense out of it. Now let me move on to the next slide. This is the same information presented in a slightly different format. Now what it has done is, it is clearly, with the help of a visual, clearly describing where the problem was. It is then breaking out what the method which was followed, the speed, the damage, the model's reliability and unreliability. And it suddenly made it very, very understandable from a layman's, from a businessman's, business leader's perspective. So we moved from this before to this after, with the same data being presented, but in a different format. I'll pause here a bit just to see in case this resonated with you, and if it sparks any questions. Mushtaq, any question from you, perhaps?
No, I think you're building upon the story here. So no questions so far, but I'm sure there are more questions as we go along.
Okay, awesome. So moving on from that, so now we understood the relevance of data, a slight understanding of storytelling, and what data storytelling, what kind of results it may lead to. So what is data storytelling? So data storytelling is basically, from complex data, we are trying to build a narrative. So we are moving from the data to a narrative. We are including a lot of data analysis as part of that storytelling. Because why is that important? A recent Harvard Business Review study shows that 87% improvement in business performance when teams are empowered with data. And then we are going to drive change using the narrative. So just using data, it is very difficult to drive change. But when you couple data with a narrative, then it becomes it helps drive the change. And this also, and I have not put it on the slide, this also mirrors your own careers or progression in your careers also. Because if you are just presenting data as part of what you do, then you are most likely at a very lower level in the organization because you are just presenting the data. And as you move up, what is expected and what helps you move up is your ability to convert data into story, into inferences, which can drive business results. So we talked about what is data storytelling. Now we are looking at why are we doing data storytelling? And some of it is just reiterating the points which I have already stated. It adds value to the data. You are interpreting complex information and you're highlighting the essential key points for the audience. Very important, you're providing a human touch to the data. You saw when I had the data about the space shuttle, it didn't look very nice, but when you added the other elements, it provided a human touch. You're offering value, and you're also building your own credibility by creating that narrative. So how, once you have the data story, you realized what is data storytelling, you know why data storytelling is important. How do you make your data story more valuable? So first of all, and I will be laying out in steps as we go along, but this is a quick overview of how to make sure your data story is valuable. So you have theory and the data, you have to clarify the purpose, you have to create a structure which goes from the introduction to the conclusion. You have to add some analytical reflections, and then ultimately you also have to focus on what is the desired action you want to drive the readers or the viewers of that data story. That's very, very important. Now the data story is just not a verbal story. These days, data visualizations are a very important part of the data story. In the example which I started off our presentation with, we had the data first, and in the next you had the visual of the space shuttle also showing exactly where the problem had happened. So that was a very powerful element. Just by reading the story, it may take you some time to figure out, okay, we are talking about an impact to the wing kind of thing. But when you show it as a visual, it becomes very, very clearly evident. People relate with visuals much more effectively than they do to just plain words. So effective data visualizations, they can help reveal patterns and trends, they provide context, and they can streamline the data so that the audience can process the information. All of that, what results in it improves the audience engagement with the data and the report you are presenting. So what are the three key elements of data storytelling? The key elements are the narrative, the visuals, and the data. And you will see that data has moved to the third stage now. What has become more important are the narrative and the visuals. So data is becoming the background. It is the foundation on which you are building the narrative and the visuals. So you build your narrative, data is the supporting pillar, then you use the visuals to enlighten, and then you also show the data to support the story. So, and this is almost, and Mushtaq would be an expert of that. If you look at any consultant's reports, you will see how there is this nice interplay of the narrative, which is based on data. There are visuals, and then the data references back to the data as part of the storyline. So that is what makes it impactful. It's not just a Excel sheet dumped on someone's desk saying, you know what, this is draw inferences from it. Now, an interesting thing which we have to keep in mind is we are talking about data, but interestingly, the human brain, only studies have shown only 3% of our decisions are data driven. There is a lot of work, a lot of what the brain does is based on emotions. And this is where the storytelling part of the data thing becomes very, very critical. Because if you want individuals to act upon the story, upon the data which you are presenting, you build it into a story, because the story is what appeals to the emotional side of the human brain. So just presenting, so it works both ways. Sometimes people would say, no, just give me the hard facts kind of thing. But the hard facts are not what drive the action. It is the emotional triggers which are caused by those hard facts, which drive the decision making. And this has been researched a lot. These are two books I just mentioned there: Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman and Nudge by Richard Thaler. In fact, Daniel Kahneman got a Nobel Prize in economics. So these are, both of these people are what are called behavioral economists. So they have studied the influence of how the brain, what triggers human reactions, like in economics and stuff, also what role emotions play in those decision making. So they have done a lot of work in that. So the point I'm highlighting is you have to link the emotional context and hard data in your data storytelling.
Deepak, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Why do we just go back to these, scripted behaviors, with all these facts around us? Is it just a matter of, we kind of re-tuning ourselves and get the storytelling aspects into our day-to-day life, or is it just not getting the recognition it needs, or what is why are we not doing this already?
So in this particular case, what we are trying to drive is we are trying to. So brain scientists have shown that the way the human brain is structured, system 1 and system 2, Daniel Kahneman says 97% of the thing is like impulsive. So it is immediate. I hit you, you hit me back, kind of thing. So it's not, you're not even thinking. It is like very fast, automatic, and very stereotypic, and it almost happens at an unconscious level. So these are deep seated. This is like our lizard brain, we say, it's at working, it's at work. Now the other side of the brain is the one which is the slow and is effortful, and it takes a lot of time for it to process, and 3% of the decision making comes from there. So what we have to do is we have to do either of two things. One way is we are trying to blend the thing so that the data driven story is also appealing to your typical stereotypical brain also, which will make those responses fast, but also are based on decision. Because if you just based on hard fact, many times you will not be making those decisions.
Okay.
So how to tell a story with data? So this, and we'll come back to that point, Mushtaq. So hold on to it. So how to tell a story with data? So first of all means find the story within the data. So as if you have been working with data long enough, when you look at data, a story already starts forming in your brain, because you look at the data. And once again, you have to keep that elephant in mind, that you're not looking just at the tusk or the tail or the side. You're looking at the full elephant. But a picture starts forming in your head that this is the story which is hidden inside the data. Then you look at the audience saying, hey, based on the audience, what is the kind of story I need to tell about it? So if you're telling with the same data, if you're telling the story to your CEO, the story may have to be crafted differently compared to if you're telling the story to data scientists or to line managers or to some people else. So it is not like one story fits all. That same data can be needs to be structured differently for different audiences. Then you have to determine what data matters. So you have many times when we are working with data, we have got such a huge amount of data, we fall in love with the data, we think all data is relevant to our story. No, it's not. What you have to do is distill out what is the most important points from the data and intersperse that into your story. And once again, consultants and big consulting firms are great at that. They don't bury you in the minutiae of the data. Look at a McKinsey report or something. They'll have, okay, 30% of people are affected by the price rise or whatever. Means those bullets are what are important.
Hey, so
Yeah.
Deepak, is it okay to ask
Yeah.
a question? So in my work, right, in my field, I always challenged with how much of this has to be quantitative versus qualitative. Any suggestions for the people here around how to balance that act?
That's means once again, it flows from this thing, means you have to see the audience also. So when you are presenting, if you are just working with data people who are just going to analyze the data further and do something with it, maybe you need to share the whole data. They are not interested in the in the story kind of thing. But if you are presenting to leaders, means many leaders will say, if you are just the guy who presents the data to them, it's like you are the data geek, you are the guy who just works with the data kind of thing. And then you have the business analysts and others who will say, we are giving you insights from the data. So first you have the data, and the data geeks just work on the data. Then they have the business and analysts who say, we are giving you the insights from the data. And then there's the next level of people who are saying, you know what, we are not giving you insights, we are not giving you data, we are giving you actionable insights. So of all the insights, also the ones which are going to drive action are the ones which you need to focus on, because what the leaders are interested in, based on this, what do I need to do? So what has happened is important, and the rear view mirror is important, but we have to look ahead. So based on what you are seeing in the data, what are the 3 things, what are the 5 recommendations on which I need to make a decision? So that is where your story needs to lead. First comes the data, then comes the insights from the data, then comes the actionable insights, and the next stage would be, hey, just the triggers, this is what you do. So but great question, Mushtaq, and we'll as we move through the steps, we'll see some of that. So you're analyzing the data and finding the insights, and then you need to identify the effective data visualization. So what are the visualizations that work best with that story? So in the example with the space shuttle, someone thought that the visualization of the aeroplane itself, of the craft itself, provides the best visualization. So that's the one which you use. You have to provide context to the data, because many times the information you are presenting may not be directly relatable to your audience. So you have to build that context. For example, hey, accident rates are going up, kind of thing, in the Dallas area, but you're dealing with an audience of say school principals. So then you have to just analyze the data in terms of how much of them are school bus incidents, and how it affects what may happen in schools. So this year the school year started and a kid got killed in an accident, kind of thing. So the whole story, you need to relate it to something which relates, which is contextual with how they need to interpret the data. The 7th one is structure your story. And this is also very, very important. Most of us means we have grown up listening to stories. And if you think of stories, the most common, if I may pose a question here, and I look forward to some of you answering it. What is the common way in which most stories start? The most 3 or 4 most common words which happen at the start of a story.
Yeah, I'll let the audience chime in the chat window here if they can.
Yeah, I can't see it, so you'll have to read them to me.
Absolutely. As soon as I see someone share some inputs, but that's an interesting question. I'm sure everybody.
Hey, if nobody responds, it means I'm not making any sense at all, and I hope all of you. I'm just
in the beginning.
Go ahead.
Something like in the beginning.
In the beginning. That's a good one. So in the beginning, or in the Western one, the very common one is once upon a time. So both of them are similar, but most stories which we have come through, read through our childhood, are once upon a time or in the beginning. Great answer. Thanks for saying that. And then, how do most stories end? What is the typical way in which most stories end? Any thoughts, anyone?
This is what our recommendations.
Now you're thinking technical. No, don't go technical. Go to the stories of your childhood. The recommendation is too heavy a word to have come across in your childhood.
I mean,
Usually it's a solution to a problem. Something happy.
So the way where I was going was, but great answers, all of them. So where I was going, most stories start if you go through our childhood stories, nothing to do with data, nothing to do with technology. The stories which resonate most in our head, with our childhood stories which we tell our kids, all of them start generally with in the beginning or once upon a time, and they end with happily ever after. So that is a storytelling structure which is deeply embedded in our human brains, which is we start with something in the past, lot of action happens in the middle, and then we come to a conclusion, a happy conclusion towards the end. Now, happy or sad, that is up up for question. But this is a storytelling narrative which is ingrained in our brains, because human brains, because in most cultures stories are told that way. Once upon a time, or in the beginning, XYZ, it came through across, this happened, that happened, lot of action happened, and in the end they lived happily ever after. So when we are trying to tell a story, even with a data driven story, the flow needs to be built that way only. If you try to twist it around so much, okay, you can tell the story a different way. You can start with the climax and go back to the flashback and all that kind of thing. But what generally relates with the audience is this storytelling narrative. So if you open up a book, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, means it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. So in the beginning it is describing how things were, then the whole narrative happens, and then the end happens. So as an exercise, you can go and look at all the historical storybooks you are familiar with, and you'll see that they follow the general this storytelling narrative. So how does it impact us? The way it impacts us is we should try to structure our story in that same narrative. This is how things were. So we are looking at the data. This is how things were. This is what happened is happening right now, and this is the happy state where we want to be, kind of thing. And then the step 8, we are talking about edit the story until it is clear and concise. So less is more. So once again, a big thing. In fact, I would say that in my storytelling here, I have got too much content on this slide. I should have put less stuff here, because sometimes less is more. Distilling the essence out of a story is more difficult than just regurgitating all your data and putting it on slides. Some of our slides, especially the more technical we are, the slides become more and more crowded because we want to put everything on the slide, kind of thing. But that's not the way to tell a good story. So this is where I end on the storytelling with data part, and I move on AI and data part. So if this has sparked any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we'll get some time towards the end also. But yeah, just let me know.
Yeah, please feel free to ask questions. I think just if there are no questions, then I'd probably just provoke some questions here, right? So coming from a subcontinent, India or Pakistan, it takes a while. We are sometimes ingrained with, probably it's cultural, that details are good. Details means a lot, and it takes so many cycles of rinsing ourselves to proper storytelling that we get into intercepting this in the most concise manner. So it takes time. It takes cycles. And it again depends on the job you're in. Some jobs, it makes you do it if you want to, if you want to survive. Some jobs you don't pay attention to it as much. So how do people consciously get started on something like this? Put this in the subconscious mind, because they can listen to this conversation and then go back to the old methods very easily, right? Happened to me several times.
So this is like the behavioral conditioning which happens with the kids also. It's the reward and punishment method kind of thing, and here everything is self-driven kind of thing. And the other one is practice makes perfect. So this is how we are So one could be is go back to something which you had done somewhere time when you had prepared a report or something, or had presented some data. Look at it objectively from the term in the context of what we went through today, and see how would you have crafted the story differently. And then the next time you get to do an exercise like that, even if your boss is expecting you to just present the data, try to present it in that different way, where you are highlighting the actionable insights, taking that next step with the data story. Means the rewards will come, because the means in the organizational context, the easier you make the life of your superior or the person above you in the hierarchy, the better off you are. Now, if you're already distilling out points to him and are presenting it to him, most likely he or she is going to take things out of that and use them in the report which he or she is going to share next up the ladder. And the kick you get out of it is when a final presentation is being shared somewhere, and you say, you know what, those 3 lines, they came from what I had I had shared as part of the story. So give it a try. Details are important. Means, of course, nobody is saying that the story is in lieu of the details. The details are there. The details will stay there. The details are not going there. Details can still be included as part of the appendix. But what we are saying is, you have the ocean, you're distilling the ocean, you're taking the nuggets out of it, and you're presenting them upfront in a story while the ocean is also still present. So you're not taking away from the data, but what you are showing is you are providing that value add, that, you know what, I'm the person who is able to take the data and draw actionable insights from it. Great question. Yeah, moving on.
That's amazing. Hey, I think we have probably room for one more question, Deepak. If that's,
yeah, sure.
I think brother Shaq.
Yeah, Mushtaq, this is Irfan.
Oh, Irfan. Hi. You come with different names every time. Okay.
Yeah. So thanks, Deepak. It's amazing presentation. Just had one question, right? So I started on this journey of doing my master's from Harvard for AI and data science. So the place where I struggled was the storytelling. Okay, as most of Desis struggle. So what do you suggest? Because it took me a while to get all of this sorted out, and always struggled with this whole thing. Doing the technical stuff was very easy for me, but to write this story, to come up with this thing, right, that was the real challenge.
So great question, and you make the question very real, which is very, very important. So so first of all, let's get this out of our minds, that being from a Desi background or being from a non-American background, we are not good storytellers. Unfortunately, what has happened because of the colonial experience and everything, most of the stories we heard are stories coming from outside, and we assume those are the own stories. But our own cultural traditions are so rich with storytelling. Now, all that our storytelling style may be slightly different from the storytelling style prevalent here, because if you know some of and my own tradition means there's the Panch Tantra stories, but the Panch Tantra stories are so like there's story within a story within a story within a story within a story, which makes it very, very complex, and that storytelling style may not work over here. Here, the storytelling style, and which is almost a universal storytelling style, is the one which I spoke about, which is the way things were, the way things are, the way things will be, and which is a good storytelling style. So that extra effort, so you have already taken the first step, you have realized that not being able to being able to tell the story or distill the story is reducing your value and worth. You want to enhance your value and worth, so you'll have to make that extra effort of coming up with a story. And sometimes it may not be right, but you, as you said, edit until the story is clear and concise. So it's a journey. You will keep on getting better and better at it. Try to frame things in terms of a story. do it as an exercise with your friends and peers. So this could be a group where you can come to Mushtaq and say, hey, you know what, let's do a session where we each bring our data stories and test it out here, kind of thing. So those and get informal feedback before I take it to someplace in work. So those kind of things could I think help.
I was not even thinking about that as a next step, but that's a beautiful next step. Hey, come back. It's like because we want to keep this as practical as possible. Otherwise things get so lost in theories. Anyway, I think we have about 20 minutes now. Let's shift to this is I chuckle every time I hear this, right? So I've been sitting in pretty senior level meetings and looking at this AI stuff. We've been on presentations where top vendors, SAP, Salesforce, and all these guys come and talk about the AI. There's so much of fat in the narrative at this stage, right? So much fat in this whole thing about ChatGPT. It's the way that whole platform hallucinates and gives you the response. Pleases you. It's super scary. To the point where I know organizations are shutting down all this stuff. Because and to really tokenize and create that experience which is beneficial in a corporate world, you have to, back to your point around data, contextualize a lot of stuff here. Otherwise this ChatGPT and all this stuff people are so excited about is going to hallucinate. It's going to give you data points which will make you happy, but it's completely incorrect.
Absolutely. So it's interesting. Yeah, means only yesterday a story came out that Microsoft had launched a travel planner or travel guide, AI driven, and on its travel guide for Ottawa in Canada, it said if you are hungry, you can go and eat at the Ottawa food bank. From an AI perspective, it was totally right. The food bank has food and one can go and eat it. But that's not where you want.
I saw in my community, everybody's getting so excited about ChatGPT and all this stuff. It's like, it's good. I got excited myself. But the underlying fact is you need to have a clean data to get any of that working properly.
Let's quickly go through that, and then towards the end, let's come back and discuss it more. So as Mushtaq, you pointed out, so AI starts with data. Means the first step, if you look at this in the life cycle, is data preparation, data cleaning, features engineering, transformation, splitting, all that stuff. Now, even before that, first of all, means anybody who has been in this space long enough knows that. So we all know the hype cycle and stuff like that. Things get hyped up and thing. And there's another interesting thing is like for most of the technology, there's as the technology evolves, there's a nose in that curve where it suddenly spikes up and it becomes very, very prevalent and important. And that cycle is sometimes 50, 60 years long. So the time between, say, Wright brothers came up with the aeroplane and then when the air travel became prevalent, it took like 50, 60 years. Similarly, AI data machine learning has been around for more than 30, 40, or maybe 50 years now. I know of people who have done PhD in AI like 30 years, 40 years ago. But right now, what has happened, because the hardware and the software has finally come together in a way that it has reached, that curve has reached the nose, and it has like spiked up where it has become more and more relevant. But a lot of the underlying concepts of AI have been around for many decades and years now. So the point on this slide I'm trying to make is AI starts with data, and why that is important. We'll come to that in the next couple of slides. So this is an interesting. The visual is very, very interesting. So there's an AI-driven driverless car, and you see an old lady and a baby on the road ahead. Which person should the self-driving car kill? There's no option. It cannot brake for whatever reason. One or the other will die. So this is a dilemma which is faced by AI applications all the time. How do they decide what needs to get done? How does the human factor into that decision making by artificial intelligence? Now, this specific things comes from an interesting study which MIT has been running over years. They've something called the moral machine, and they've used it to pose these various kinds of questions: human over pets, passengers over pedestrians, women over men, young over old, higher social status over lower. And interestingly, the answer to this question differs by country, differs by cultural background. So in this same example, it shares that countries with more individualistic cultures are more likely to spare the young. So for countries like France and Germany and others will say, spare the young and kill the old, while the countries like China and Taiwan will say, kill the child and spare the old. So it's interesting how our cultural biases come to play a role in AI, which poses the question: who is designing the AI, and how can it work for everyone when there are so much differences about such basic things? So that's a very important dilemma, which is still being grappled with, because if most of the AI is developed, say, in the West, will it cover all the cultural aspects of how the East or the North or the South deal with the same questions? Not of this specific example, but about anything else. The next interesting question is about AI and data-driven bias. So, and this relates to the relevance of data for AI. And many in our communities are very familiar with it, because what happens is, if AI is trained on a particular data set, I'll give a couple of examples. For example, if AI is trained on a data set of, say, all doctors in the past, okay, so it was given images of doctors from the past, and on the basis of that, it is now given images of people, and it has to identify who are the doctors. Now, if the data set which it has been trained in has all white older males as doctors, and it is given a new the current data of where there are women doctors, there are minority doctors, it won't identify them as doctors, because it has never trained. In its training, it has only seen old white males as doctors. Women it has seen only as nurses, so it will only assume that any women image it is presented to it, it will identify as a nurse, not as a doctor. So these are very real problems, and especially in as these visual recognition software spreads all over the place. So if the past database shows that all bearded guys of a particular color are terrorists, and it assumes that you are passing through the airport, and if you match that profile and it flags you as a terrorist, I mean, these are real problems. This is happening. China is using these kinds of techniques to identify people from their minorities and stuff like that. So these are real problems. So this is where the data plays a role, because the data on which the AI model is trained determines how AI will do what it is doing. I hope that point comes clear. In that way, AI is also like all everything we deal in the computer world: garbage in, garbage out. So if it has been trained on garbage data, it will produce garbage results. And then layer onto it the biases of the people who have built the models or programmed the models also, as we saw in the earlier slide. Role of data in generative AI. So as Mushtaq was mentioning in the beginning, these days all the conversation is about generative AI, which is what Chat GPT and other things are about. The G word in that is generative. And that generative AI, this whole thing is moving from what was model-centric AI to data-centric AI. So generative Chat GPT and other large language models are data-centric AI. And on the right, we are just seeing the sheer amount of data which is being used to build those models. So GPT-1 had like 4.8 gigabytes, and like GPT-3 is 45 terabyte of raw data filtered from 570 gigabyte. And GPT-4 and all means the data size and data quality are both constantly increasing. And an interesting dilemma is coming up, which will become more and more relevant as days goes by. lot of the new data which is created, a lot of the new content which will get created is being created by AI. So you are asked to write an article, and you use AI to write that article, and that article gets published somewhere, and then the next training database for that AI picks up that article. So the AI is being trained on data which has been created by AI. So it becomes like a spiral of the quality will keep on declining, because that human creativity, input, ingenuity is not getting reflected in the data, and it is using old data which has been created by AI itself. So this, I can go on and on about this stuff. That would be a talk by itself. But yeah, I'll pause again for questions, and we can start wrapping it up. Mushtaq.
But I mean, like for the folks here, who's so this is so prolific right now. The AI is being discussed everywhere. Every conversation has to have an AI subject. I mean, it's happening in my world. In every client meeting, there is an AI element to it. In fact, we're having a big event coming up in September in San Francisco where there's a whole stage arranged around it. So for folks here, what would be a practical advice in getting more involved in building a career around this? I mean, building a career around this or making it part of their narrative, right? If they're doing something else.
So I think means a couple of things come to mind. Means one would be is trying to morph whatever you are doing to fit the new paradigm, which is a AI driven paradigm. And one key role which is happening, which is emerging there, is around what is called prompt engineering. So what happens is all these large language models, they give you the output, but the output is based on the question which is asked to them. And the framing of that question becomes very, very critical. And there are many attributes which can be added to the prompt, which makes the results which they come up with very more and more relevant to how you want to deal with. So a lot of roles are emerging around that prompt engineering space. So that is one area which can which could be looked at. Other thing is, means you obviously I would strongly recommend people to start playing with these tools. Means see what they can do. So go to chat. Means the GPT-4 is a paid version, GPT-3 is free, Bard is free. Pose a problem to it and see how it's like, hey, I'm giving you this COBOL code. Can you give me the Python equivalent, or write me the code to do this and this in Python, and see what it comes up with, or whatever language you are using. You'll slowly start getting a sense of what its limitations and what its strengths are. Now, what I have found where its strengths are right now, means I use it a lot, not just from my work perspective, but generally. And I'll give you both the good side and the bad side. The bad side is, like, when it first came out, both Bard and Chat GPT, I have done a lot of writing, and I used to write for various newspapers and stuff. And so I just posed a question to both of them saying, hey, what do you know about the writing of Deepak Seth, who wrote in the editorial board of this newspaper in the 1980s or 1990s or whatever? Both of them gave me answer, but they were all made up answers. So one of them said, oh, Deepak Seth was a great guy. He wrote this and this. He died in 2000 this at the age of 67. He did his master's from University of Michigan. All of it made up. And it gave me a list of articles which I had written, and I was reading those. Nowhere I have written those things, because we have to understand that these models, Chat GPT and all, are their large language models. They are essentially based on the words which you give them. It uses its data to figure out what the next sequence of words should be, and it presents those words. It is not verifying that information. So it would have said, okay, when I asked that question, it went back and it may have looked up other Deepak Seths also, included them in the story, and then presented the story to me. So if you are in any role which you are trying to utilize AI, you need to remember that hallucinations are very real and they're still happening. So how do you deal with that? You deal with that and most companies are trying to approach it that way, is, you know what, this model is very good in framing things in English, in building. So what I use it for, what is, you have a big article, you say, hey, clean it up and summarize, you post it there and it gives you a very good summary. So it's very good at doing that, doing those kinds of things. So what you want to do is and also and I go back a bit, it is built on data which is in the public domain. A lot of your company's information is in your own domain. Chat GPT and Bard, they don't know about it. When your call service agent or custom, and if you want to deploy these capabilities there, you want him or her to be responding on based on your information, not on the information it has built off Reddit and Wikipedia and stuff like that. So what companies are doing is, hey, let us build a prompt which is based on the information which we have, and then pass it along to these tools to frame it in the form which because they have got good capabilities in doing that. So a marriage of those two things needs to happen, and a lot of considerations of security and data privacy and all that needs to happen. But that's all that is different conversation. But a lot of opportunities will emerge in this space for sure. Chat GPT and others may not end up getting used in the way they were created, but AI driven capabilities will start getting embedded as co-pilots in a lot of software which we are already using. So LinkedIn has already, like these days, the prompt comes up, hey, do you want AI to help you write your post or something like that? You will start seeing it appear in PowerPoint, in Word, in Excel, different kinds of places. In refactoring legacy code, because COBOL programmers are a dying breed, and you want COBOL code to be converted to Python or whatever, means this could be very good at that kind of things. So we have to look at those kinds of options.
Yeah, I think you brought up a very interesting topic around prompt engineering, which I don't think it just does any justice here on this call with a couple of minutes. We need to probably set up a separate call. One of the things that I did, around generative AI is for a client. It's a utility client in the Midwest. We pretty much, their average handle time was around 4 minutes for a call, right? It's like a utility customer, you and I calling up and, hey, I want to shut down my electricity, or my electricity is not working. I may need to make a payment, or I don't have money to pay, all those things. So each of these call center agents, they have to go complete those call notes for every call. And we use generative AI to contextualize the data around it to wrap up those call notes. And what this happened is the entire call duration got reduced, resulted in about $10-15 million in cost savings for the client. So, and so I can talk about the practical use of how we applied in generative AI for this client. And but you're right. I think the concept of prompt engineering is pretty important here, and probably we need to set up some time to kind of just talk through some of the concepts in a follow-on call. But this is about data, so I think we had good coverage, and I think you told the story pretty well, Deepak. Thank you so much for doing that. And I believe there's some common questions around how can I get into an AI job or a data job. It's like it's like a boxed-in thing where you can just knock on the door and get in. I wish the answer is that easy, but it's not. You need to consciously develop towards that skill and consciously work towards getting into that kind of roles. Probably we'll do that again in a follow-on call. I think this is a stage where I would request everyone to get off mute. If you have any follow-on questions, we'll do about 5-10 minutes of follow-on questions, and then we'll wrap up. If there are no questions, we could still wrap it up.
Yeah, hi. So just have a quick question. Thanks, Deepak. This is a great presentation, and also Mushtaq for coordinating this. This type of session is really great for us to participate and learn. Question on courses relating to AI. What would you suggest, Deepak, on this for someone to quickly get into learning and applying things in work?
So there's lots and lots of courses available there. So I myself, interestingly, 3 years ago, as Mushtaq was mentioning, I did the UT Austin has a course on AI and ML, data science using AI, means AI and ML, 9 months course. I did that one, and to tell you how quickly things are changing, I did that 2 years ago. There was not even a mention of generative AI or LLM in that. It was all around, okay, character recognition, optical recognition, a lot of cool stuff, interesting stuff, building the entire thing kind of thing, but there was nothing about. So this is a very fast moving field. So things will keep evolving and changing. But yeah, for basics means you can pick up any of those courses. There's this guy Andrew Ng. Looking him up on, he offers some courses on some organization he has called I'm forgetting the name, AI related. There's the word AI in that, but they offer free courses on many different things related to AI. So you can pick up some stuff there. Many of the other universities have also started offering courses on AI. But if you want to go for like quickly leverageable skills, I think prompt engineering would be the one to go in for, because because that's something which could be used like. But if you're a hardcore data guy and you want to work in the data space associated with AI, means that's a different ball game. But if
I think one thing is, we overemphasize on technology, but to be honest, when these guys, when this AI is so prominent in these across everywhere, right? So even finding the use cases, the role of functional consulting, the thinking that goes into where you get the best bang for the buck is also quite important. Besides just working on the technology itself, and making sure that you realize the value out of that use cases is also quite important. So I think there's a track here for the functional people, for the business analysts, for the functional consultants. There's a track here for the technical consultants, from mostly manifested in the form of prompt engineering, and then I think there's a track here for data consultants as well.
Mushtaq, you hit the nail on the head, and interestingly, like I write a weekly blog about AI related stuff. If you look up my LinkedIn profile, it is mentioned there. It's called Deepak AI, Demystifying AI. So the next edition, what was playing on my mind was around this building up of use cases only, because that's the challenge which many companies have. AI has come about, and I see that all the time, because when you ask organization leaders or different groups in the company, hey, come up with your AI use cases, they are still thinking in the old mindset and coming up with AI use cases. And that's the way the human brain is. Like if all what you have been used to is a Belgadi, and suppose somebody says, build me a use case for a Ferrari, like how would you're not able to think that way. You will think, okay, how to make the bell stronger, how to means it's like it's that way. So that's a very, very good point, Mushtaq. Means a lot of functional expertise on how to make AI relevant for what the technical team should work on, building the use cases and priority for that. That will be an important skill set too.
Yeah. Deepak, I might have to bring back. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you. That's great answers.
Thank you.
All right. Looks like we have one more question. Someone raise a hand.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate the information you've given so far on storytelling, especially. I am a product manager, and you sharing your insight about wrapping storytelling around data is really helpful, and something that I will take along as I perform in my career. I have a question though. What articles or what books would you recommend that would help improve storytelling around data?
That's the one which flummoxes me, because I haven't written a book yet. There's a book in me somewhere, but I haven't written it yet. So what I would suggest is, just look up any. First of all, just separate the data. So data part, we all know, we are good with it. Let's keep it aside for a bit. Just look up some books on storytelling, and basic books on storytelling. And then another very interesting perspective, if you have kids, just look at some of their storybooks. Okay, even we have never looked at that from that perspective. Just pick up your son's or daughter's storybook, any storybook, the picture storybooks, and just see. Now you have this, since you have this new perspective, just see the flow of the story and see how the story is being built up, and then try to see how it can relate to what of some business example which you are dealing with. Do that as an exercise once or twice. Means it would be fascinating. And just I will also look up some things and I'll send them up to Mushtaq. But I'm not ready with a list
So
right now.
One thing I asked my team to do, right, is like, tell me a story, your story, right, in 3 slides. Okay, and 3 slides, you specify how many words can go into that. And what invariably happens is when you guardrail, ring fence some of this, is pictures start emerging rather than words. Right? And so I think so you give a good example. So something you could, and Deepak, I may be totally corrected here, but I feel like you could take something like tool like PowerPoint and start telling stories that are near and dear to you, to yourself or to your family. Back to your point, right? Because the trick is, once you start building your mindset around storytelling, the trick is, how can I simplify the story? That's why Deepak goes back to go to children's book. That's 15 times in this call here, right? It's like the storytelling is the trick is, how can you simplify this? I know it's very easy to simplify in front of the kids, but how do you simplify this in front of the CEO, right? So that's where the trick is, and it takes a couple of practice.
In fact, Mushtaq, and you hit a absolutely great point. And if we are able to explain something to a kid, we can explain it to the CEO, because kids are the most. So this is an unprogrammed computer, and you are programming it on the basis of your story. But sometimes they have their own myths and things already in their head. You can do that. So similarly with the CEO also. And then on PowerPoints, means like I work with a lot of startups, and they come up with pitch decks and stuff like that. And somebody had, and I'm forgetting the name now, about who said that he laid out this rule of 10, 20, 30. And the 10, 20, 30 was 10 slides, 20 minutes, and 30-point font. So, or I may be getting the order a bit mixed up. Maybe it's like 10 minutes, 20-point font, and 10 slides, 20-point font, and 30 minutes. So it shouldn't be more than that kind of thing. So you are distilling everything. Distilling things into less is more difficult than putting all your content out there. So that's the key thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see one more hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, Deepak. My name is Kazi. Thanks for this opportunities to discuss about this. Appreciate that. I have a real quick question. I know you guys are about to wrap it up, but what's your thought about the cybersecurity and uncontrolled, at the very very preliminary stage we are at the moment in the AI era, and you told us earlier that it's taking like a steep nose. I mean, going really upward, really steep. The trend is very steep now. It looks like it's very uncontrolled at the moment and very open. So what's your thought about surrounding like a cybersecurity, the data AI with that? I would appreciate your thought. Safety net.
Yeah, great question, Kazi. Because of course, and I briefly mentioned about privacy and data privacy, data security. I mean, those are skills which will become even more relevant in the as AI develops, because a couple of reasons for that. One is the bad guys have also got access to AI, and they will be using AI to say hack passwords. They can do things much more faster, more efficiently, identify patterns more effectively. There is this whole thing around adversarial networks, so generative adversarial networks, GAN, which is the next big thing in the AI front, where different AI models compete against each other and then they keep getting better, kind of thing. So cybersecurity is one field which will need to evolve as this evolves. One of the big reasons why most companies have even at my workplace, and I believe in many other workplaces, you cannot use ChatGPT or Bard on your work computers because they are not sure the questions which you ask them or the information which you put in prompt, how the companies Google or OpenAI or Microsoft or Amazon or others would use that information. So most companies have not yet opened it up to their employees. So that's a cybersecurity thing. Other thing is, like, even when you are building stuff for rollout, people are very wary of passing their information. So if you are working at a particular company and you want your call service agent to answer questions based on your manuals, your information, your procedures, whatever is there, and even if you want to use ChatGPT and others to structure your response, you don't want a lot of that information passing on to them because you're not sure how it may get used. So now there are new techniques coming of, okay, that information will be passed on to them in a vectorized format, which still carries the information to them, but it cannot be. It's almost like something encrypted, which they cannot use for other purposes. So those are all kinds of things where cybersecurity will continue to play a very, very important role. But that's a whole topic by itself. I'm sure Mushtaq is getting a lot of ideas for future sessions, and I won't be the expert for all of them, but I'm sure there would be other people who will step up and many of you may be the experts who come and share your thoughts about those things.
Now, my thing is, like, I appreciate that your response is pretty good. I mean, my background is the programming side and the database maintenance and all those things last 20 years. But now, towards the cybersecurity, I'm trying to explore in there. So I'm like in the hybrid position at the moment. So I'm trying to combining those two together: application side, application development, along with the networking and infrastructure side. Now it's totally whole new world. I'm seeing it now. What you're saying, all those restrictions and all those things, if we are, I mean, that's gonna cause, like, networking and the infrastructure side gonna fall behind on the AI pace. We don't want to restrain the programmers or developers to keep going with the development. That's not a good idea. That's my perception.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to also, at the same time, we need to secure the whole environment for everybody. I'm talking about, like,
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
Great.
it's a good topic. Probably, like many of the topics that we had to segue for sessions on its own. I think we need to probably have a session just around security aspects.
Yeah, one thing before to Kazi's question, I would say is, Kazi, have you used ChatGPT so far, Kazi?
Yes, I did.
Okay, because this would be an interesting question to pose to it, and this is the kind of thing I found it's very interesting to say. Just do it as an exercise. That I have a background in this, and this, and I'm interested in learning what role means cybersecurity and infrastructure and all will play in the emerging world of AI, and give me a bulleted response or something, and let's see what it comes up with, and that will give you also a sense of how good the tool is for these kind of things, whether it is talking sense or it's not talking sense. It's not directly related to your question, but it's a fun little exercise to do.
Thank you.
All right, I think we are coming closer to the the closing time here. So, and again, a lot of fascinating conversations, great thought-provoking discussions here, especially around storytelling data. I think a lot of people have taken some notes, and hopefully it benefits them. This is recorded on a private channel, and I have to just share it with a few people who could not make it to this call. Deepak, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking this precious time of yours, on Saturday morning, and thank you everyone who joined. I know how busy life is with all the commitments, family, etc. For you to just invest your time here in learning something. One thing I would want to part this meeting up with is always stay curious, because it's very exciting to go learn few things and implement what you can out of that. Great. This is our first session in Nurture Entry, and I'm so excited to do this. I never picturize myself as doing something, but I feel like with the technology available at our hand, and when people have sparing some time, why not we bring experts like you, Deepak, and a few of our community members to benefit from this session. So hopefully, inshallah, we'll have more of these sessions in the future. But for now, we have to conclude. Again, thank you everyone for participating, and Deepak, special thanks to you. I may have to bring you back here on prompt engineering, which is a fascinating subject.
But thanks everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks of thinking for me. And I mean, this is a great group. Some great questions. And hopefully, as you make your data and AI journey, means you'll pick up some of the points. You never know when what you heard at what time comes in handy or comes in useful. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Deepak Seth, Dallas. If you write, my name will show up there. Maybe Mushtaq can share the link with you. Also, subscribe to my AI-related newsletter if you are interested in AI-related stuff. So it's written in layman's language, so maybe it's you may like it. And yeah, let's stay connected, and all the best.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.